Status symbols have always tracked whatever is hardest to obtain. For decades, that meant money on display. Houses and marquees, zip codes, designer logos, private school tuition. But scarcity has flipped. Digital abundance means that you can have literally anything delivered to your door practically overnight. What's actually disappearing now is time that you actually get to inhabit. That inversion is quietly rewriting prestige. The real flex in 2025 isn't more convenience apps, it's refusing to outsource every single friction point just because an interface offers. Cooking your own dinner on a Tuesday night, growing a small garden, giving a friend an undivided hour. Those acts broadcast a new kind of wealth, attention that hasn't been captured and hours that have not been monetized. I tend to think that what we see portrayed in media, particularly social media as it is user-generated content, speaks broadly to a general sort of tension that we're all feeling collectively, and seeing things that my entire life have been touted as less than, wastes of time, become their own kind of status symbol is just tickling me pink. So if you've been noticing this too, or just want to know what I'm going on and on about, stay tuned for the rest of the video. And as always, if you enjoy it, thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, check the down bar for links to all my social media platforms. Come find me on Instagram, and let's just do this, girl. So in my opinion, the emerging markers of real status nowadays and probably going forward are going to be things like time in the tangible world, i.e. low screen hours, being out in nature. In fact, I feel like we're seeing a big example of that being sold to us through the algorithm these days. Like there has been such this alignment with sort of wealth, affluence, and the American West, Montana, Wyoming, those areas, but not even necessarily the West, but just kind of wide open spaces, lots of property, acreage, access to real dirt and trees and sky and sand. We're not only seeing this presented to us visually through the algorithm, but there's tons of businesses that are thriving underneath this new interest in kind of Americana. And like I said, the wide open spaces, wild freedom of it all. The next thing I think is going to be a marker of real status is going to be hands-on self-sufficiency, gardens, learning how to cook for yourself, home ec. Do you guys know that home ec doesn't necessarily just refer to the class that maybe you took in high school in the early 2000s? It actually used to be the way people lived their lives. They would find ways to make money off of the things they were creating in their homes to support their family. So just the skill of being able to do that, I think is going to be, actually, I don't think it's going to be a huge high status marker. I think it currently is. Some of the most lucrative places you can get into right now financially is investing in companies that help people accomplish things they cannot accomplish on their own for themselves. And it tends to be these exact kind of hands-on self-sufficient things. There's real money attached to this because it's a really valuable thing. I feel like the hostess homestead kind of aesthetic has gone very premium. We've seen that with Meghan Markle recently, her whole rebrand with As Ever. She did a really good job trying to align this sort of like hands in the dirt, make my own honey, but also I'm wearing like $1,200 sweater sets. So not only do I think kind of this self-sufficiency thing is going to be something that people will be able to use to enrich their own lives immediately, but it's the very things that are going to make other people wealthy in the very near future. Anything that has someone reacting to and dealing with the real world is going to be where the money is. The next thing that I think is going to be kind of a growing status symbol is like the dinner party. And I have a whole video coming just on dinner parties and why they're having such a moment on social media right now. So I'm not going to get too far into it, but I will say the idea that you could potentially live somewhere where you have enough friends and family to invite over for some sort of dinner celebration that you cooked yourself in a home that you own. That idea was not so long ago kind of seen as like antiquated and old-fashioned, but it is now truly, in my opinion, its own kind of status symbol. And like I said, there's a video coming on it, so stay tuned. So in kind of keeping with the trends I've noticed online, I want to talk about a few more things that are kind of signaling my brain to believe I'm onto something here. The first one is the cottagecore trend, how mainstream it has gone and how long it has held on and kind of grown. Even though when it first emerged, we kind of looked at it collectively as like, oh, well, this makes sense. You know, people are at home more, they're spending more times in their kitchens. Maybe they want to finally take this time to learn how to make sourdough. There's nothing else to do. This tracks. However, I don't feel like we have seen some sort of diminish in the interest around the cottagecore of it all. I only think we have seen it expand. And if anything, I kind of think it's responsible for this entire type of lifestyle that we are now associating with affluence. But yeah, I kind of think it's cottagecore that did this, that really opened a generation of women's eyes to the simpler things in life. I gotta tell you, even the fact that Martha Stewart is having the renaissance, the career renaissance she's having right now, I find it fascinating because like there was a time where Martha Stewart became cool. And I remember this its time, but when I watched her documentary on Netflix recently, I thought they did such a good job, by the way, of showing how complex Martha Stewart is as a character. I love when media is willing to do that, kind of show all the, the people, warts and all. I don't want anything delivered to me quite so succinctly and so simply. I want the nuance, I want the texture, and I thought they did such a good job with her little thing on Netflix. But anyway, I remember back in 2014, I think it was, when she did the roast of Justin Bieber on Comedy Central, and then later on went to become really good friends with Snoop Dogg. And culturally, it was just so cute, and we loved it, and we thought it was funny, and it was more novel than anything. But now we're seeing Martha Stewart actually get a lot of attention and accolades for the thing that made her famous to begin with. And that's only interesting if you've been around long enough to remember that, like the documentary pointed out, Martha Stewart was not exactly well venerated in our culture. She, like a lot of women, I think, who dedicate themselves to kind of the domestic arts, if you will, or any kind of feminine practice, she was dragged for it mercilessly. She was the butt of jokes very, very often. To see her now, not only kind of cashing in on that cultural relevance she got from her friendship with Snoop Dogg and kind of the nostalgia around her, but to see her now actually being praised and accepted for her domestic skills the way that she is, I am just tickled pink by it. I grew up in a time where if someone called you a Martha Stewart, it was supposed to be insulting. Now, I know that Martha Stewart's been around way before Cottagecore, but I don't think we get the Martha Stewart boom the way we're seeing it right now without the Cottagecore thing. And it may be kind of twee and silly to some people, but it truly did walk so that a broader, well-lived life trend could run. It reframed care work, things like gardening, baking, homemaking, as creative expression and a kind of intentional distancing from the everyday hustle and bustle that we have become so accustomed to. Even if you could argue that this is performative, which I don't think it is, the numbers are kind of proving that the idea converts. Views are measuring how many people, and Gen Z specifically, and most surprisingly, are hungry for a life that's a little bit slower, a little bit sweeter, and less laden with blue light and plastic. So I also kind of want to talk about the new it girl. And I did just speak about Martha Stewart, but I want to kind of keep this going because not only is Martha, but Ina's having a moment. There's been a huge obsession around Nancy Meyers, her aesthetic and the movies that she worked on. There is this very interesting thing happening where young Gen Z and millennial women are looking to women who are much older than them and finding that aspirational. But historically, we've not had that done in traditional media. Like, I guess what I mean is, typically, once a woman gets a certain age, we're supposed to just be dying to get back to being young again. And the young women are supposed to want to stay young forever. The idea that young women now would look at someone like Martha or Ina or Nancy Meyers as aspirational. Again, in a time in my life when I've never seen homemaking or domestic arts considered aspirational, but also in a time where anti-aging and fear of growing older, and in my opinion wiser, is so rampant, it has been fascinating for me to see the new it girls becoming Ina Garten and Martha Stewart and Nancy Meyers and all her sons. I am tickled pink by it. The modern gospel promised us that outsourcing was going to result in more happiness, but all that happened was we just wound up with outsourced lives. Dinners are prepared for us, errands disappear into an app, and all that freedom, all it really did is just kind of corral us even more. I just want to make something clear really quick. I understand that if you do not even remotely sort of like the idea of domestic work, that there's no amount of video essays I can put in front of you that are going to change your mind on that. I think that pointing to kind of the domestic arts is what I like to refer to them as a status symbol is helpful when it comes to understanding what is most difficult to have access to. Right now, if you think about it, it is very rare for people to have access to the time to take care of their own homes and take care of their own meals, take care of their own kids, all of that stuff. And if you believe in the powers that be, or you believe in the idea of powers that be the way that I do, you might look at it the way I look at it, which is this feels like mass gaslighting to get us to not only romanticize or be excited about the idea of not having enough time to be home and take care of our own little area of the world, but to get us excited about it and then to get us to pay for it, and to pay for it so much that we kind of end up in this weird place of like having luxuries, but also being broke. And when I say having luxuries, like most of my life, someone cleaning your house, cooking your food, running your errands, that was something only like rich people did. This is just crazy to me that we simultaneously are in an economy that can support this. Like people who would probably consider themselves broke also probably do things like DoorDash and Uber Eats and Instacart, and they would probably tell you they have to because they work so much they don't have time to do anything else. Though you may, as someone who doesn't like this type of content, or you just cannot get excited about sourdough or setting a table or potpourri, I don't know, whatever your thing is, there are people like that, and that's really not who I'm talking to. I'm just talking more to the girls who are probably like me and have seen a huge shift in kind of the acceptance and excitement of this. Now, it's definitely tied to influencer culture for sure, because it's real easy to have an Instagram, Amazon shopping account, which, you know what I'm talking about, those accounts out there that just have tons. Their whole point is basically just to be like QVC for Amazon. But there's tons of them that are also really attached to homemaking. So I do think it's a byproduct of people seeing an opportunity to sell an image online and then make money off of it, wash, rinse, repeat. But I don't think we can possibly get out the ideas of finding joy in being at home if we can't put it on social media where all the other ideas are as well. So there's just going to be really sanitized, corporation heavy versions of it. And there's going to be more authentic, kind of aspirational in the right way kind of content about it. So I guess what I'm saying is we have to look at that. I think we have to look at this idea that we are consistently getting more and more dependent on algorithms and the internet and the apps. And I have like a super large conspiracy theory thing going in my head of the things that are being normalized for us in terms of like what should be considered valuable versus what shouldn't. And I can't help but notice that for a very long time, the version of value and the idea of what's valuable and important ultimately just leads to us being more dependent on corporations. Ultimately on we need them to make our money, and we need to give them our money because we can't live without them. I guess that's like in this most simple way I can put my whole theory together here on this video. Is I think literally the most simple things of life, sleeping under the stars, being out in nature, cooking your own food, are going to be only accessible eventually to the people who really have money. And the things that we have very recently, up until very, very recently, looked at as things that show that you really have your act together. Like I said, errands being run for you, houses being cleaned for you, foods being cooked for you. That was rich people stuff for most of my life. And now I think we're really seeing an inverse. Like, obviously, I know real rich people also use these apps and stuff like that too. But a lot of people who use these apps can't even afford to use them, let alone afford the things they're buying that these apps are bringing to them. They just literally don't have any time to do anything else often. Now, there is caveats to that, as I get into later in the video. Some of us are just being really, really lazy. I guess what I'm saying is there's going to be a big difference very, very soon between the people who use these apps because they choose to and because they can afford to, and the people who have to and are also completely dependent on them as well. And that's something I think we need to look at more critically. Okay, let's get right back into the video. So I'm sure that there would be pushback to accompany the following sentence, but I'm really pro women getting a lot more interested in being at home and domestic. Not only because I think a lot of women already want that. Like I've said this in videos before, we've really praised this idea of a corporate go get 'em kind of lifestyle, but there are plenty of women who have the kinds of jobs that require them and the kinds of lives that force them to work very menial, low paying jobs, would give anything to be able to give that up and stay home with their families. And yet we also consider that very thing degrading to the very same woman, as if there's some sort of inherent larger amount of dignity to be found in climbing the corporate ladder at Target or something. something. And I understand that everyone's going to have different plans, different paths, but my big declaration at this point as it pertains to spaces targeted for and by women is we need to diversify our conversations that we're having. And diversity is not defined by the things you do not allow in. And I gotta say, the very conversations that I'm looking forward to having on this channel are the kind of conversations that a lot of women not only reject, but find harmful in some way. Like that's the exact terminology they would often use to describe what I'm talking about. And I mean, they're entitled to their opinions. And again, I'm not trying to say that I have the one size fits all for all women. I don't think any of us do. But what I do think is that people, and women in particular, are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And I think they're capable of taking whatever life path lights them up and working hard enough at it that they can find success in many different ways. In fact, it kind of goes part and parcel with what I said at the top of the video around the entire idea of home economics. For a really, really long time prior to the Industrial Revolution, it's not like only rich women stayed home with their families. That's a much more modern idea, actually. The irony of the trad wife thing is that it's still a very modern concept. This idea that a man goes off to work and a woman stays home and collects the check and wears pretty dresses and bakes all day. That's not traditional. What is much more traditional is that women would typically find ways to be home and be available to the running of their family, be there for their children, be there for their husbands, but also would find ways to be a little bit entrepreneurial in their own right. And with things like the internet now, that's even more accessible to most women. I am so sorry I keep popping in and out like this, but so many things are coming to me as I'm editing. I also want to add, not only did women find ways to make money at home or run small businesses, but all this talk you hear online of people being like, where's my village? Where's my village? Because the old adage, it takes a village to raise kids. That's where your village used to be too. Women would work together raising kids. The community, the immediate community. Y'all ever heard the term a woman's touch? A thriving community was always a sign that the women were invested in that community. That is like our strength. That is what we have to offer, and we downplay it so much. So women would do things like volunteer, help with the elderly, do after school programs. They used to teach each other's kids, like up until not that long ago, there would be like a little schoolhouse in the middle of town, and the women would all teach these children. Like, there used to be, I'm not saying that every single solitary aspect of them good old days was the best old days. I think a lot of them had more figured out than we give them credit for. However, if you just look at how much of a mess everything is right now, and I think one of the things that we just completely lost the plot on collectively, and we continue to for as long as we refuse to just even discuss this. I'm not saying this has to be every woman's path. What I'm saying is we need to allow the introduction of this path as something that is well venerated the way that it ought to be. There is no reason that we cannot say collectively that our communities are suffering. Everything is online. We're constantly talking about how these kids are struggling so much because all they do is come home to be by themselves and sit online where their parents are either at work or their parents are sitting online. Like, we have completely checked out of the real world. And that is not going to change or improve if we cannot at least acknowledge, A, that it's a problem, and B, that there is an actual solution, and C, that some of us would be so good at that. Like, I'm not saying everyone has to do it or that everyone would be good at it, but the women that would, I think we have a problem with not offering this as a solution to not only their problems, their family's problems, but a lot of people's problems. And again, there's ways to create and generate income in this. There are systems there. It just takes some organization and some planning and some expansion around this topic, but we have lost the plot and gone too extreme, in my opinion. That's probably the last time I will pop in, but I had to bring this up because it's not just about the monetary things that women were capable of figuring out when they were home. It was what they were able to accomplish within their communities that was also so valuable as well. Thank you, Kay. Bye. A lot of people are going into a lot of debt, getting degrees for things and jobs that will not even be here much longer. So that's kind of why I take such umbrage with the idea that we can't offer women multiple different ways of doing things. And in fact, something I would like to see happen in my time on social media is once I get successful again at this and I feel like I've really got my feet grounded and I have a teachable system, I would love to teach women how to make money for themselves. Making money is a skill. It is not hard objectively to go into someone else's business and have them pay you. It is a lot more difficult to figure out how to generate money for yourself. I've done that most of my adult life now, is made money for myself. And there is a skill there that can be learned. And it is very dependent on the skills that you already have at your disposal. In fact, the more I sit and think about the idea of home economics, what inspires me to really shift my perspective and my position on social media is that I'm kind of selling myself short. I've considered for a long time that the only thing I do have to offer is beauty content. And it's so ridiculous because I have so many things I'm good at and so many things I could teach other women to do and so many other things I could do to offer value and generate revenue. So I really hate this fear mongering of women around how impossible it is to have a satisfying life if it doesn't look one perspective way. And you're going to hear me go on and on about that in the following videos. But I think what I really want you guys to take away from this video is that I'm not trying to make the case for the fact that you should add more work to your plate for the sake of doing so. I will say that some of the work you're denying yourself is the work you need in order to feel like you're actually present in your life, but that also some of the work you're taking on is kind of pointless anyway and needs to be pruned out. There are a lot of different opportunities you can take today to get more directly involved in your immediate life instead of outsourcing it. A lot of them cost $0.00. If anything, they require something that I think is even more scarce these days, and that's attention. I'm willing to bet a lot of the things in your life that could directly improve today could very easily be improved, not with the injection of more money, but with the injection of more autonomy around where your attention is going and why. This is not necessarily about a money thing, although I will offer some of us are really unaware of how much our dependency and convenience is costing us. After I had my son, there was a good 6 months, 9 months or so where I was outsourcing all the errand running. I had a house cleaner coming to clean my house, and we were also doing like meal delivery service because it was just all hands on deck. And that was so expensive to do. Like, I thought I was doing something wise by giving myself more time, but I can't honestly say that time was even used efficiently. And I don't feel like there was any real ROI on any of those services I was buying for, except for the lady that was cleaning my house, because she was an absolute delight. I still ended up having to deal with these things eventually, and I had kind of gotten rusty around all of them, and they cost an arm and a leg. I think what I'm trying to get at here is that, yes, sometimes there's a point to this. Like, after I had my son, we live somewhere where we have no family around us, so it was just us trying to manage everything with the newborn, and the apps and services I had to bring on to kind of help with the load were very, very helpful. And also, it was a very temporary kind of band-aid because I still had the same problem once I got to a point where I couldn't financially justify it anymore. And the problem was, I don't have time for this. I didn't have any more time when my son was 6 weeks old than I had when he was 12 weeks old, when I stopped using any type of service or any type of delivery, housekeeping, any of those things. I didn't keep them for very long because financially it was just a crazy thing to do. And I knew inherently that I couldn't rely on them forever. Like, I think we even did things like Factor. We did meal deliveries. Again, they were helpful, but at the same time, they really made transitioning into normal life a lot more difficult because I still had the existing problem. And now I was way less happy with my finances because of all the money I had to shell out. And the way I think this whole thing ties together with my initial statement on women staying home, like, you're probably thinking, what does that have to do with this whole well-lived life thing? I think a well-lived life is also going to be relevant to intention and kind of stepping outside of the box. And again, the things we are normalizing, outsourcing every task that we have, things like cooking our own meals. These are just so many things that most of us either haven't done in a long time, haven't even considered budgeting time for. And there's a whole generation of Gen Z who doesn't even know how to do things like cook. And I just think we have to start looking at all the ways we are allowing this convenience, algorithm focused culture to dominate and take over us because it seems helpful in the moment, as these apps did for me. If I lived around family, if I had made different choices before I had my son and had really thought this through, I would make sure I did not have a baby unless I had family around, because it ultimately will end up costing me more money and energy in a different direction. Like, I think that even goes back to what I was saying about helping women make smarter choices in whatever arena they want to pursue, instead of making the argument that there is only one smart choice, because there's a lot of things you can do as it pertains to the way you set your life up from a young age that can help you avoid getting caught in these convenient traps that I think are only going to become more insidious as time goes on, as people become more and more enfeebled by them, and as people are unable to have the majority of their needs met without them. It's kind of like how people are saying AI will eventually cause a dependency, because people will literally not even be able to think without it. We have to start getting serious about these conversations. I've cut those things out completely. I think we ordered groceries for the first time last week in 6 months or something. It's been a long time. We have just shut this down as an option to us. It just was shocking how much money we were wasting on that. And I even feel this way about streaming. In fact, me and my husband were talking about this the other day. I think our approach to streaming is about to change. I mean, they've completely retooled this whole system so that it's now just as expensive, if not more expensive, than just regular cable. The golden days are over. But for us, I think what we're going to do is just rotate them, get less subscriptions, less things leeching money off of us here and there in the name of convenience that ultimately are just kind of making us possessions to Silicon Valley in a way. We're kind of here to support these businesses more than we are allowing them to truly support us in any meaningful way. So why do I think a well-lived life is going to be the new status symbol? Simply because it's hard, and it's going to be hard to attain, and most people hate doing hard things. It asks for curiosity, it asks for patience, and it asks sometimes for deliberate inconvenience. In that sense, the new luxury is not aesthetic, it's existential. It is the dignity of handling reality directly and discovering how it answers back. Life feels unreal now. I've seen this kind of popular sentiment going around the internet where it's like everything feels fake and I hate it. And it feels that way because we are not living our lives anymore. So the invitation then is simple. Pick a corner of your world, get your hands on it, and keep them there long enough for that friction to turn into memories. It's difficult, occasionally messy, and unavoidably alive. Precisely why in 2025, your life and your ability to live it has become the rarest and most enviable status symbol on earth. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you do thumbs up and subscribe if you did enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts on this down below. I have a Substack coming. You guys should let me know down below how you'd like me to structure it. I can't decide if I should put my hot takes, my real spicy, like unpopular with most people takes over there, or if I should put my more personal thoughts over there. I just don't know if everything I think should come to YouTube, and I'm trying to figure out where to put all of that. Anyway, I will catch you guys in the next one. I hope you're having an amazing day.